Um, so about 25 years ago, a friend of mine who was depressed at the time, and I went to his house and I asked him to go out, and he didn't want to. He was upset. I convinced him to go out and have a few drinks with me. I thought that might make him feel better. He'd been dealing with depression a lot in that time frame. That night, everything went well. That night when he got home, he got into a fight with his father, and he was drunk. And his father asked him how long this was going to go on, and to make a long story short, he said, "You don't have to worry, but you won't have to worry about me anymore." And he jumped out the window, and he landed a few stories below, and didn't kill him initially. So the next day I learned he was in critical condition at Parkland Hospital, and I went out there, and it was horrific. His mind didn't control his body anymore. So he was twitching, and it was I'll spare you the details, but it was grotesque. And so they ended up taking him off life support. So that was the event, but I started having nightmares about it immediately afterwards. I felt responsible for it because I had convinced him to go out that night. If I hadn't, I feel like things would have changed. In retrospect, I learned that if it hadn't happened that night, it probably would have happened another night. But I dealt with that guilt for 25 years, and I had nightmares about it. I caught myself drawing images from what I had seen at the hospital over and over again, and it was driving me crazy. So I went into my own depression, and I realized that the only way I would get sleep would be if I got myself so drunk that I couldn't dream. So I did that, and as a result, I became an alcoholic. And I had blackout drunk sessions for years. As a result of that, I started doing drugs. Basically anything that would numb me from the guilt and from the recurring images that kept coming up. In retrospect, having spoken to psychologists, they think I probably had PTSD. And in dealing with this, I wrote sort of an essay or a story about it to kind of come to grips with it. And in that, I wrote that it's a terrible thing when your mind becomes your worst enemy, because you can't escape it. You can't pull the covers over your head. You can't unplug the phone. You can't hide from it, and it's torturous. And so I dealt with depression and drugs and alcohol. I was revived by paramedics twice. And I fell through a glass window and almost bled to death one night. I didn't call for help because I assumed that would be better for me. So I flirted with suicide myself many times as a result of the guilt. And I've since learned that it's not uncommon for that immediate circle of friends, when someone commits suicide, that there's a lot of collateral damage. There's a wake of depression and dealing with that tragedy that comes from it. And that close circle of friends is typically the first people that get hit with it, and they get hit very hard. You'll be speaking to one of the other people who was in that close circle. He had many of the similar problems that I did, but I'll let him tell you that. One of our other friends that was in that close circle was not so fortunate in dealing with his trauma. He committed suicide about later. But in having spoken to everybody that was in that close circle, I sort of dropped out from the world. I didn't really have contact with anybody. I just became a recluse. But in talking to those people as a part of the healing process, I've learned that they all had they all dealt with the same issues. And what I learned, what I wish I had done differently, is I wish that I had reached out to people earlier on. Because the thing that finally saved me from it was I had a son. And I found something that I loved more than I hated myself. And I didn't want him to become a part of that collateral damage, that ripple effect that happens. And so I quit everything cold turkey. And it was horrific. But I realized that I was really the only barrier to prevent him from becoming yet another ripple, another bit of collateral damage in that wake. Had I reached out to somebody sooner and found other people that had dealt with this situation, I think it would have helped me cure it a lot sooner. Because eventually, time healed the wounds, but I was left with the addiction. I was left with drug addiction. I was left with the alcohol addiction. And those things cause their own problems and their own collateral damage. But I think the thing that helped me was being able to, when I finally dealt with it, was talking to the other survivors, talking to other people who had dealt with it themselves, because you deal with the same kind of things. The guilt is enormous for survivors of suicides. But you learn that that's common, that you weren't to blame, but it's hard to get over that. And I think if you reach out to somebody sooner rather than later, and that's what I think is wonderful about this foundation, is providing a circle of people who have done this before and who have survived it, for people that are going through it. If you reach out and you find those people and those voices that can help you understand that you're not alone, that would be my advice, is doing that sooner rather than later. Because I think if I had done it sooner, I wouldn't have 25 years of lost years. I had 25 years of my life that was essentially wasted, because that was how I chose to deal with it. So get help, talk to people. You're not alone. And listening to other people's stories is incredibly beneficial. And I wish that I had done that sooner.